Katara Bhutanugraha Katara Rite Tvam Sorada Gnam Vai Rite Tvam Sorada Gnam Vai Vairan Karam Avairinam Vairan Karam Avairinam Nanu Bhagavata Nityam Bhutanu Grahakatara Rite Tvam Soradagnam Vai Vairan Karam Avairinam Nanu Bhagavata Nityam Bhutanu Grahakatara Rite Tvam Soradagnam Vai Vairan Karam Avairinam Nanu Bhagavata Nityam Bhutanu Grahakatara Rite Tvam Soradagnam Vai Vairan Karam Avairinam. Please chant. Mataji's. Nanu. Now, Bhagavata, devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Nityam, eternally, Bhuta Anugraha Katara, very much anxious to bestow benedictions upon the fallen conditioned souls. Rite, accept, Tvam, yourself, Sorida Ganam, a breaker of friendship, therefore not countable among the Brahmins or devotees of the Lord. Vai, indeed, Vairinam Karam, Vairam Karam, you create enmity, Avairinam, toward persons who are not enemies. Translation, all the devotees of the Lord, but you are very kind to the conditioned souls and are eager to benefit others. Although you wear the dress of devotee, you create enmity with people who are not your enemies, or you break friendship and create enmity between friends Are you not ashamed of posing as a devotee while performing these abominable actions? Please repeat. All the devotees of the Lord, but you, are very kind to the conditioned souls and are eager to benefit others. Although you wear the dress of a devotee, you create enmity with people who are not your enemies. Or you break friendship and create enmity between friends. Are you not ashamed of posing as a devotee while performing these abominable actions? This purport. Such are the criticisms that must be borne by the servants of Narada Muni in the disciplic succession. Through the Krishna conscious movement, we are trying to train young people to become devotees and return home back to Godhead by following rigid regulative principles. But our service is appreciated neither in India nor abroad in the Western countries where we are endeavoring to spread this Krishna conscious movement. India, the caste Brahmins have become enemies of the Krishna conscious movement because we elevate foreigners who are supposed to be mlechas and yavanas to the position of Brahmins. We train them in austerities and penances and recognize them as Brahmins by awarding them sacred threads. Thus, the caste Brahmins of India are very displeased by our activities in the Western world. In the West, also, the parents of the young people who join this movement have also become enemies. We have no business creating enemies, but the process is such that non-devotees will always be inimical toward us. Nevertheless, as stated in the Shastras, a devotee should be both tolerant and merciful. Devotees engaged in preaching should be prepared to be accused by ignorant persons, and yet they must be very merciful to the fallen conditioned souls. If one can execute his duty in the disciplic succession of Narada Muni, his service will surely be recognized. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 18:68-69, Ya idam paramam guyam mad bhakteshva abhidashati bhaktimai param kritva maya mam evaish yatyasham shaya nachatasman manushesu kashin me kritama bhavita nachame tasmad anya priyataro bhavi. For one who explains the supreme secret to the devotees, devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end he will come back to me. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will ever be one more dear. Let us continue preaching the message of Lord Krishna and not be afraid of enemies. Our only duty is to satisfy the Lord by this preaching, which will be accepted as service by Lord Chaitanya and Lord Krishna. We must sincerely serve the Lord and not be deterred by so-called enemies. In this verse, the word Soridagnam, a breaker of friendship, is used because Narada Muni and the members of his disciplic succession disrupt friendships and family life. They are sometimes accused of being Soridagnam, creators of enmity between relatives. Actually, such devotees are friends of every living entity, Sudam Sarvabhutanam, but they are misunderstood to be enemies. Preaching can be a difficult, thankless task, but a preacher must follow the orders of the Supreme Lord and be unafraid of materialistic persons. Om Agyanatimarantasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurmilitamena Tasmai Shri Namaha Kam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Lagate Garimya Kripatamaham Bande Shri Grimdinitaranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Dasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. All the devotees of the Lord but you are very kind to the conditioned souls and are eager to benefit others. Although you wear the dress of a devotee, you create enmity with people who are not your enemies, or you break friendship and create enmity between friends. Are you not ashamed of posing as a devotee while performing these abominable actions? Interesting. been involved in the preaching of the Krishna conscious movement in the West, especially when we were in the earlier days of Scotland, we certainly weren't received with open arms by a lot of people. And some people would see us as being some kind of threat, or they thought we were some kind of evil cult. They didn't bother to try to find out, what was it we stood for, what was our principles, etc. Things are changing now. People are becoming a bit more favourable, tolerant, or at least legally they have to tolerate, if nothing else. That wasn't there in the past. And therefore there was a certain amount of persecution went on. And it was interesting that also when I went to India for the first time, I seen there was so much racism towards the white devotees. Neither are we accepted as a representative of God in the Western world nor in India, because ISKCON at that time also didn't have a big foothold in India. It's much better now, but in those days, people just seen you as being white. That meant you've got loads of money. Therefore, they should just harass the hell out of you to get your money off of you. To the point where so many devotees would never go back to certain places again. So these so-called Damvasis, they shot themselves in the foot because people just don't go and visit in those places. I remember visiting one, I won't mention the name of the place, but I remember visiting one place, and I got out the car. As soon as I got out the car, it was like being attacked by human mosquitoes. They just wanted to draw blood. So I tried to ignore them. I knew I wouldn't gain entrance to the temple, but I just walked as if I was going in anyway, as if it was just like something I did every day. And then they actually physically had to bar me from going in, and I just pretended I was ignorant. Oh, why are you stopping me going in? And then, oh no, you can give us some Lakshmi and we'll make an offering, and then we can give your donation to the temple, to the deity. I says, no, I can give it fine, it's not a problem. I says, I can give my donation to the deity. And then he says, no, you have to give, and we'll do it. I says, no. I says, no darshan, then no bakshish. And they were getting frustrated because you could see they were just hanging around with nothing to do all day except pounce on the pilgrims. And then, so I wouldn't give them anything. I started to walk away, and then he went like this, as if he needed money for food. And he was like twice the size of me, and I just pointed at his belly. and he was like, that prasad? I says, you don't need any prasad. So we just left, and it was a shame because it was a place where Lord Chaitanya had some wonderful pastime, but I thought, if maybe in some small way, if many devotees can do like that, they might get the lesson that they're not going to get anywhere if they treat us like this. We don't need that kind of stuff. And immediately I was thinking, I come all the way here, and Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda are standing in Lesmahigo, freely giving their darshan. Jagannath Baladev, Subhadra Devi are standing in London. They've come to us. So I felt actually so inspired to come back here, because this is where the Lord is. I mean, the Lord is there also, but the Lord's mission is every town and village, and we're so fortunate to be part of that. We're not trapped in some kind of caste conscious thing or some bodily conscious thing. Sure, we might be attached to our bodies and we get into the bodily and mental concept of things, but we're really on the right path, and it's only a matter of time before these bodily and mental designations dissolve. And then all that will be left for us is a pure devotional service, which is what's been given to us. So it's such a great gift, such a great bestower of mercy. Srila Prabhupada has came and he's cut the knot of attachment, the Hridaya Granthi, this knot of attachment to the material world. And even Prabhupada says, because generally the knot of attachment is getting entangled in family life. But Prabhupada said, if one even practices family life and Krishna consciousness, then it's a source of liberation. It's not a source of entanglement. It's not the same thing. So therefore, everything which a devotee does in any ashram then it can be liberating. We just have to, the main common denominator is devotional service. And that all begins with Shravanam Kirtanam, from hearing and chanting. As long as we're hearing the holy name, keeping in contact with the Supreme Lord through that direct connection of the holy name, then the devotional service will be there. Because what is that? What is that chanting? My dear Lord, please engage me in your devotional service. And then the Lord gives us some service, and then we get to chant again. And even as we're doing our service, we can be chanting, we can be hearing kirtan, hearing lectures, etc. So it was interesting because it meant that actually, well, we have no recourse. When you become a devotee, you can't go and take shelter of India, because India itself is not necessarily a Krishna conscious country. Bharatabhumi is there. It's land of the pious, but also not everybody in India is pious. You know, you can find the best and you can find the worst. And of course, you find good and bad everywhere. But you'll find people who will take these teachings and they'll distort them, and in the name of enlightenment, then they'll lead their followers into darkness. And this is mentioned in the Ishopanishad. It's there in all countries, of course, and all religions. You get people who are misrepresentations of that. And because they have some materialistic motivation, or they have some mundane conception of what God consciousness is, what Krishna consciousness is. So it gave me great, I had the realization that really our shelter is in Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. It doesn't matter what they say in the West, it doesn't matter what they say in the East. As long as we're following Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, we're doing the right thing. And so this means that we have to give up mental concoction. This mental concoction, it's not a small thing. Due to mental concoction, people start wars. You know, empires rise and fall, all based on mental concoction. And sometimes we think we know what's good for us, but if we know what's good for us, then why are we still suffering? So here, Srila Prabhupada is talking about, ultimately, the devotee who is dedicated to this disciple succession of Narada Muni, then their service is recognized and they are promoted to Vaikuntha, the land which is, or the realm which is free from all anxieties. So, and why is it free from anxieties? Why is the spiritual world free from anxiety? Anybody? What would you not find there that you would find here? Competition. Well, spiritual competition may be there, just like when we have book distribution marathon, the spiritual competition is there. As long as it is spiritual competition, it has to, you know, it's not just we call it that, it has to be it. Spiritual competition, what's the difference? If someone else wins, then we're happy for them, right? In material competition, if someone else wins and we lose, or even if we become second, you know, become second, you may as well become last. Because if you're not first, you're not remembered, right? And, you know, there was a famous, Prajumna may remember this person, there was a famous Olympic swimmer back in the 70s called Mark Spitz. And he was winning everything, hands down. But who remembers who was second to him? Nobody. But that guy was also amazing, whoever he was. He just never made it, you know, by a split second. So in material competition there's winners and there's losers. Spiritual competition means everyone's a winner. Who's a winner? The devotees who are trying, say for example, do a book distribution marathon, then everyone who's going out on books, giving out those books, they're a winner because they're engaged in devotion service. Everyone who gets the books is a winner because they get the book. The Lakshmi, which is given for those books, that is used in Krishna consciousness again, so it's generating further Krishna conscious activities. So it's all auspicious. And when the devotees have transcendental competition, they're actually happy to see others beating them because they think, Jai, it means more books are going out. If I'm doing really good and someone does better, that's even better. But if we become upset or miserable because someone's doing better than us, then that envy is a material thing. Prabhupada said that almost everything can be used in Krishna service except for envy, that must be given up. So what is there in Vaikuntha, the land which is free from anxiety? Then what is it which is causing us so much anxiety in this material world? That's a root cause. Everything's coming from I, me, and mine. As long as we're concerned about I, me, and mine, what I want, this is for me, what is mine, as long as we're concerned with that, then we live in the world of friends and enemies, and we live in a world where we're simply creating janma, mrityu, jara, vyadi, birth, death, old age, and disease. But when we learn to give that I, me, and mine up and just put Krishna in the center, then we can become free from that anxiety. And it's actually such a relief. We're so accustomed to trying to control our lives, control every aspect of it, and to the point where sometimes, we may get labeled control freak, right? Or sometimes we label someone a control freak because we don't want to be controlled, because we want to control as well. Everyone's jostling for control. But when we understand that Krishna is actually the controller, then it's actually such a great relief that I don't actually have to think that I'm the controller, to just accept, I'm not in control. Of course, we don't make some shallow misrepresentation of that by just becoming irresponsible. Sometimes in the name of detachment, then people just become irresponsible. So when Krishna talks about abandon all varieties of religion, surrender unto me, talking about renunciation, he doesn't mean that we renounce our intelligence. When we leave so many things behind to come and join the temple, we don't leave our intelligence, we bring that with us. And we use that to surrender to Krishna as Buddha Yoga. How can we surrender to Krishna? How can we... The 6 Goswamis bowed down in scheduled measurement, which meant everything they did had purpose. And this is what this Krishna conscious movement is giving us. It's giving us a great purpose in life. There's no higher purpose. It's called Sarva Upakar. There's so many different types of upakar. So kar means to do something. Upa means like some kind of like up, or some kind of elevated activity of all. Just like we say upar means up, right? Upper. So upakar means highest welfare activity, and sarva upakar means of all welfare activities, this Krishna conscious movement is the highest welfare activity, because it's getting to the root of the problem, which is misidentifying I, me, and mine. How many empires have risen and fallen based on I, me, and mine? Someone thinks, well, this is my country, and we want to extend it, just like just now, there's some war going on, and one country is trying to impose itself on another, and they've got some conception that was originally part of their land, but before they all come along, then it was there. Prabhupada makes this point that this world is here before we come along. It'll be here when we go away, but we come along in the middle and we fight, and we say, this is mine, this is yours, and we put a line there and say, don't step over there or I'll blow your head off. Where's that in any scriptures? This so as we were reading earlier on, Vrindavan is actually not just a place, it's a state of mind. I remember once Shivaram Swami came here, and he had just finished his Nava Vraja Mahima multi-volume books. And generally when a devotee visits and they are doing a book promotion, and they talk about the book and maybe talk about writing of the book, etc. But Maharaj didn't talk about anything. He just spoke about Krishna, and he made the atmosphere so Krishna conscious that I thought, because I was waiting, when's he going to talk about the book? When's he going to talk about the book? But what he did is actually made the atmosphere of Vrindavan, and that was the proof. He brought the proof with him, and he says, this Krunabhavan can be Vrindavan too, if we're in the right consciousness. On the other hand, sometimes people physically go to the Holy Dham, but they're not there. It's like Prabhupada used to say, you cannot buy a ticket to Vrindavan. Of course, you go to the travel agent, you can buy a ticket to Delhi, you can get a taxi to Vrindavan, but is your heart there? And do we know what it means to be there? So we're practicing Vrindavan life here every day. Our service, our surrender, this is following the footsteps of the gopis of Vrindavan. This is the line of succession which is coming down to us. And in this way, we're getting the chance to go from the lowest, the Malecha, to the highest, to Prema Bhakti. This is what Lord Chaitanya has given. Krishna Prema Pradayate. He's giving that, freely giving it. He's not saying, okay, first you have to do 10,000 years austerity, standing on the tips of your toes, eating only dry leaves once a month. And then we can talk about Krishna Prema. No, he's just freely giving it. All we have to do is take. So this, Prabhupada was referring here in the purport that in India, the caste Brahmins have become enemies of the Krishna consciousness movement because we elevate foreigners. And Prabhupada would say, due to a poor fund of knowledge, they do not understand what is the principle here. So this is mentioned many places in the scriptures. And it's mentioned that just as bell metal is turned into gold by an alchemical process, then the fallen conditioned soul of any kind of standing can be turned into a devotee simply by the process of devotional service, by this process of taking shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, taking instructions. So, of course, taking shelter doesn't just mean diksha, it means shiksha. Diksha is one part of it, but shiksha is the sustaining factor. Just like every day we feed our bodies, so we feed our spiritual body with the instructions from Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. This is how we become free from the ignorance of this bodily concept of life. And while that's happening, sometimes it seems like it's a long time, but when it's over and we get to the other side, then we think, oh, why didn't I do that sooner? It wasn't so painful after all. It's just like you go to the dentist. Anyone ever tried to avoid going to the dentist? I remember when I was young, I was taken to the dentist and my mother was thinking I was being very compliant, and I was compliant all the way to the waiting room. And as soon as they called my name, I ran out. But then I had to come back. I knew I had to come back. Couldn't avoid it. It was my karma. And I knew also that the reasoning was there. It's like, well, you're suffering, you want to continue to suffer, or do you want that suffering removed? I want it removed. Okay, so you just have to go through this little pain so you can avoid a long pain. So that is Krishna consciousness. We have to go through sometimes a little pain, and that pain is what is simply our attachment to not letting go. We're hanging on to something which we think is good for us, and and we don't realize that others are saying, just let it go. You'll be fine. Krishna will catch you. Put your faith, put your trust in Krishna. So this is what the Guru Parampara is asking us to do. Just to understand Krishna's activities and appearance as not something mundane. If we can do that, then Chakvideha Panarjanma Naiti Mamati Sorjana, then we don't come back to this material world again. So I remember Hridayananda Maharaj giving a lecture many years ago, and he was, I think he was in Bombay, Mumbai, and he was asking these students, because they were questioning him, they were being a bit antagonistic, and he says, so, if a Brahmin is eating meat, is he still a Brahmin? If a Brahmin is drinking alcohol, is he still a Brahmin? And they were trying to avoid answering the question because they knew that he was right, but he wouldn't let them off. He'd answer my question. If a Brahmin's eating meat, is he still a Brahmin? So similarly, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, guna karma vibhaga saha. It's by guna, by quality, and by karma activities, not by birth. He doesn't say janma. He says guna and karma, not by birth. Because of one's guna and karma in a previous life, they may get the janma, they may get the birth, which is auspicious, but simply the birth itself is not enough. Prabhupada gives that example. If someone is the son or daughter of a surgeon, then they don't automatically just have the qualifications to go and practice as a surgeon. So you went to the doctors, and the doctor wasn't in, but there was like some 10-year-old kid there saying, "Well, it's okay, my dad's the doctor, so just tell me what's wrong, I'll sort you out." Okay, you should have like 3 Smarties and a couple of Milky Bars. That's your prescription. And then you happen to be diabetic, you say, "No, I don't think that's right. No, it's okay, my father's a surgeon, my father's a doctor." So similarly, it's by qualification. And even for initiation, we try to follow some regulative principles and chant Hare Krishna a certain amount of times to become qualified for initiation. But who's qualifying us? The spiritual master's qualifying us. He's given us instruction how to be qualified. We don't even know how to qualify ourselves. We don't, unless we were told that, we wouldn't know. So it's quite interesting to see here that Daksha, he's been very pointed. All the devotees of Lord are very kind, but you, it's a real dig at him, isn't it? It's quite nasty. Although you wear the dress of devotee, you create enmity with people who are not your enemies. So Prabhupada talks about here that they have become enemies of Krishna conscious movement. They're enemies in the sense that they see us with enmity, but we don't see them. Just like the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, they were popular with both the gentle and the ruffians. They didn't see anyone as their enemy. They simply just see the modes of material nature acting upon someone utilizing their minute independence to choose one way or another, understanding there's reactions. Therefore, they're always compassionate. And it's out of compassion that Narada Muni and their disciplic succession preach in such a way as to cut that knot of attachment. I remember we were advertising, we used to do an annual festival in Preston, and some of the kids like Shital and Bina and at that time Vidya also was quite fit. They used to help us advertise the festivals. And they tried to get some of their friends involved, but some of the parents would be, "Oh, don't get too religious. We come to the West to get some qualifications and we want all the material things the West has to offer. But and we do a certain amount of religiosity so we can get our material goals. But don't get too religious, because they don't want their plans for them to become accountants, doctors, dentists, or whatever. They don't want that spoiled." And but then, when the parents are seeing that the children are becoming degraded, they're getting into drugs and all the rest of it, then they're thinking, "Oh, maybe you should go to the temple." So prevention is better than cure. And this is actually now becoming the case, is that people are valuing this Christian conscious movement more and more, even with our Hindu friends and brothers and sisters. Then they are seeing that this Krishna conscious movement, there's so many young people who are joining it from Western Indian backgrounds, so many backgrounds, and they're following this culture, but at the same time, they're happy and they're safe. They're not getting entangled in this degraded activities of the West. It's such a big anxiety for parents nowadays to put their kids into school. We know a few parents who've taken their kids out of school because they were getting bullied, not because they weren't taking drugs. And this is just like, 12, 13-year-old kids getting forced to do this. Otherwise, they're getting singled out. So in Kali Yuga, that which is virtue is seen as vice, and that which is vice is seen as virtue. If someone is pious, then they're looked upon as being weak. And if someone is humble, then they'll look upon that as being some kind of weakness. And if someone's very proud or someone is demoniac, then they're seen as being some kind of powerful person. So this is the confusion of Kali Yuga. But ultimately, Lord Chaitanya's mission cannot be frustrated. The will of the Lord always manifests. Nothing, because Krishna is Ajita, he's unconquerable, then there's nothing existing which can stop the will of the Lord. Even one disciple asked Prabhupada, will Lord Chaitanya spread his mission through his devotees? And Prabhupada replied, Lord Chaitanya will spread his mission despite the devotees. So he's not depending on the devotees. We've got a chance to get the glory of doing this service, getting the mercy. But we can't become proud in thinking we're doing it. We're simply also recipients of the Lord's mercy. Not that we're the merciful ones. We're simply passing on the mercy. That's all. And as soon as we think we're the controller, then we are under the influence of Maya. We have a little control. Everyone has a little ability to control, but very, very little. And whatever jurisdiction we have for control, or whatever ability we have to control, then we utilize that in Krishna's service, and then that is proper use of that minute independence. And that is liberating us. So Prabhupada says here that we have no business creating enemies, but the process is such that non-devotees will always be inimical toward us, so we can't let that stop us. And he says, nevertheless, as stated in Shastra, a devotee should be both tolerant and merciful. So in that regard also, Prabhupada mentions in one purport to, can't remember the full verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, where he says that people who are like dogs and hogs cannot appreciate the Krishna conscious movement. But nevertheless, the devotees of the Krishna conscious movement will continue with this responsible work of preaching Lord Chaitanya's mission. So Srila Prabhupada is giving us confidence here. Don't worry. The people may criticize, they may oppose and whatever, but don't worry about that. You're doing the right thing. You've got Lord Chaitanya behind you. Krishna's behind you, and Krishna cannot be conquered. So we've got the Guru Parampara behind us. And that's something we can be proud of. A devotee is generally not proud, but he can be proud of his spiritual master. He can be proud of this Guru Parampara, proud of these transcendental literatures. There's no comparison, there's no competition. So we don't have to try to say ours is better than yours. It's not necessary. We just present what is there and let it speak for itself. People are looking for this knowledge. They're looking for the relief, and the relief will come through reading these books, through starting to take up the chanting, and bit by bit leading the life of a devotee. So this is a spiritual revolution. And Prabhupada mentioned, there was some years ago, one devotee said it was one senator who was concerned about the effect of the Krishna conscious movement, what it will have in American society. So he was trying to draw other government leaders' attention to this, and they weren't taking him seriously. Prabhupada says, yes, this is good, because by the time they realise what we're about, it'll be too late. So in some way, we shouldn't be too worried, that hundreds of thousands of people aren't roaring down the street chanting Hare Krishna. Let's just do our part just now, plant all these seeds and keep fanning the sparks, fanning our own spark. This is the first and foremost thing. We are allowed to be selfish in that regard, to look after our own spiritual life, which means we have to do this bare minimum of chanting minimum 16 rounds on the beads every day, and following these principles and taking only Krishna Prasad. In this way, we immunize ourselves from the ill effects of Kali Yuga, and keeping association of devotees. And regularly we hear Srimad Bhagavatam amongst each other and discuss this. And then gradually all that is inauspicious within the heart will be destroyed. It will be burnt to ashes. So here Prabhupada says that the devotees engaged in preaching should be prepared to be accused by ignorant persons, and yet they must be very merciful to the fallen conditioned souls. So we shouldn't be afraid of their ignorance. Sometimes they may appear very strong, or they've got so much backing, etc. But we shouldn't be afraid to actually call out things for what they are. We can do it in a tactful way, but nevertheless, if the devotees don't say it, who's going to say it? If we don't say this is wrong, that's wrong. People are thinking that. I remember on Sankirtan once I was using some bogus lines, and the person said no, and the Hoxha came and says, well, you better, if they say no for the right reason, than say no for the wrong reason. So better that you just stand and say, okay, I'm a devotee and we're doing this is what we're about. And if someone says no, then that's fine, but they may say yes, because that's what they're looking for. Otherwise, if we don't say what we stand for, if we don't say what we believe in, then the people who may choose that might miss it because they don't hear us saying it. So we're simply carrying out these orders. We're just like the post office workers. We're simply carrying the letters to other people. And we're trying to be a via media for that. So in this way, we're fulfilling Lord Chaitanya's desire that everyone become guru and try to liberate everyone in this land. So we're all becoming gurus by taking this Krishna conscious movement and passing it on to others. And we may not be recognized. In the mode of passion, people want to be recognized in human society, isn't it? They want to get some recognition here and now. So we shouldn't sacrifice our Krishna consciousness for that. We don't compromise our principles. We may adjust our presentation so that it's more palatable. We do that as much as possible. But ultimately, we cannot compromise our principles, certainly not our own personal practice of it. And if one can execute his duty in the disciplic succession of Narad Muni, his service will surely be recognized. So the recognition we're looking for is from Krishna. So this is mentioned that although Krishna is all attractive, that is one translation of Krishna, the all attractive, then he's attracted by the devotee's devotional service. So this is what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, don't try to see God, but act in such a way God will see you. Because Krishna can see us already. He's always seen us. But the disciplic succession, they're saying, oh my dear Lord, please see this devotee is trying so hard in the material world to be your devotee. Despite all his faults, they're trying so hard. And the Lord is very kind by nature. At the same time, he reserves the right to not reveal himself to casual or inauthentic devotees. That's mentioned in 4th canto. So we have to become bona fide, and bona fide means that simply we follow the Guru Parampara and we don't change anything. We don't water it down. So here, the verse is given from two verses actually, from 1868 and 69 of Bhagavad Gita, that those devotees who explain this supreme science, devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end they come back to me. There's no one dear to me, nor will there ever be one more dear. So it's not that this is it's just like sometimes when people are playing a concert. I remember when I was young, I'd seen some band playing in Glasgow Apollo, and they're saying, yes, this is the best. This is the best concert hall we've been to. Glasgow's the best crowd. The next day they'll be in Manchester saying the same thing, and then they'll be in London saying the same thing, just puffing everybody up to make them feel great. Keep buying our records. You're doing a great job. Keep the money coming in. So, but no, this is not Krishna doing some kind of sales line like that. He's saying, no one is more dear, nor will there ever be anyone more dear. Because it's such a sacrifice to do that, giving up our self-comforting, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, give up self-comforting and just spread this Harinam Sankirtan. And we feel that if we have to go out on book distribution or go and do some program or do some service, the mind might be into it. Some days it might not be, but we give up our self-comforting and we do the duty, just like Prabhupada gives that example in the Bhagavad Gita, that the mother will cook regardless of how hot it is. So in India it's very hot in the summertime, but she'll cook. How much more hotter is that? Just like Vrinda, she's in the greenhouse here in the summer. It's like 50 odd degrees. She doesn't give up her duty. It's astounding. And similarly, he says that also one does not hesitate to take their bath in the colder months of the year. So we might hesitate to take our bath in the morning. We have to drag our mind in there. But we do it anyway, and gradually it comes to the point where we're so regulated that we enjoy it. We enjoy what was once an austerity becomes a pleasure. So we have to keep on pushing until then it becomes natural. We have to create enough momentum to replace the momentum of our material conditioning with the spiritual momentum. Prabhupada refers to material nature as second nature, but it's not our first nature. So it's our second nature just to follow the mind, to follow the senses, to follow what we think is our view, our opinions. But really, we want to align ourselves with Krishna's opinions, with the opinions of Guru Parampara, and see how that applies in our different circumstances in life. I was once in Mayapur, and there's one devotee, Bimal Prasad, who is from South Africa. He was living there as well, in Mayapur. And I was taking prasadam with him, and one younger devotee came to him, he was revealing his mind. He was having some difficulty. He says, what shall I do? He says, you know what to do. He says, you've read the same Bhagavad Gita as I have. He says, you've just forgotten to take advantage of it. And then he gave him the verse. He says, look, for example, this verse. So he wasn't just telling him what to do, he was giving him the tools, saying, look, these are your tools here. And that's where to look. So here Prabhupada is urging us, let us continue preaching the message of Lord Krishna and not be afraid of enemies. Our only duty is to satisfy the Lord by this preaching, which will be accepted as service by Lord Chaitanya and Lord Krishna. We must sincerely serve the Lord and not be deterred by so-called enemies. So-called enemies because we don't see them as that. There was one man used to made it his life's mission to try to disrupt everything we did. When we were on Sankirtan, he'd come and interrupt, and he'd say nasty things. And when we were doing festivals, he'd stand outside the festivals and try to deter people from going in. But in due course, we decided not to take a kind of antagonistic view towards him, some of the young devotees were getting a bit passionate about it. They wanted to do something about it. But we didn't do anything about it. And ultimately what happened is the police came along and they took care of him. And later on he got himself in big trouble. He was presenting himself as being some kind of saved person, free from the effects of the devil, as he would call it. But it turned out he was far from it, and he ended up in jail for doing something very nasty. So this is what happens. Sometimes people, they commit offences against the devotees, and then they get some reaction. It comes back to them, and the reputation is ruined. They're trying to ruin the reputation of Krishna and Krishna's devotees, and then that reaction came back to them. But all the while, we were just trying to be friendly with them. We didn't take him antagonistic. It was interesting because he used to go to the charity shops and he'd get Prabhupada's books and he'd read them to try to find fault. And then he'd phone up and he'd try to discuss and try to poke holes. But it became so blasphemous that we actually had to he wasn't really getting the benefit of it. But who knows, maybe long term, we don't see what's happening in the long term. Even Kamsa, right? Everyone was afraid of Kamsa, and Kamsa was so inimical, but then he got the mercy. So better that it's Anyakulayana Krishnanu Shilan back to him. It's better that it's a favourable attitude towards Krishna consciousness. It's so here, I'll just finish with this. Preaching can be a difficult, thankless task. So Prabhupada is letting us know that expect that. And if we realise it's a thankless task, but we're not alone, but a preacher must follow the order of the Supreme Lord and be unafraid of materialistic persons. So this is Prabhupada, Abai Charanaravindam. Abai is fearless. And we become fearless when we also follow strictly in his footsteps. Okay, any questions or comments?
Thank you, Prabhu. There's an online question from Pamela Frame. I'll read out the question. Are you allowed oat milk? Are we allowed oat milk?
Are we allowed what?
Oat milk.
Oatmeal?
Milk.
It's offerable to Krishna, then certainly, yeah. Yeah, thanks for your question. Anything which is within the category of foodstuffs which is offerable to Krishna, then we're allowed. So the devotees, they only eat food which is offered to Krishna, and food within that category is given Pataram Pushpam Palam Toyam Yomi Bhakti Prayachati Tadaham Bhakti Paratam Ajnami Prayatatmanaha. So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, that if one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, fruit, flower, or water, I will accept it. And Prabhupada goes into that in a bit more detail. He says we don't eat meat, fish, or eggs, garlic or onions, and everything else we can offer to Krishna. If we don't know the prayers how to offer them, we simply just ask Krishna, please, my dear Lord, please accept this humble offering, and then we can take the prasad remnants. Is that okay?
Hare Krishna. Thank you for class. I'm thinking of the verse in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna tells Arjuna that it's better not to disturb the materialistic person. But I know Prabhupada describes in the purport that the devotee is more merciful. I'm just wondering, why does Krishna say this?
So if you want to take the full verse, it's let not the wise disrupt the minds of those who are attached to fruit of action. They should not be encouraged to refrain from work, but to engage in work in the spirit of devotion. So that is the full verse. So basically what is being said there is that we shouldn't be telling them not to do this, not to do that, but we should encourage them to do something with devotion. That's what Prabhupada did, isn't it? He didn't say stop this, stop that. To some degree he said, these things are detrimental, but he was always encouraging people to do with the spirit of devotion. Is that okay? So that's the art, is how to do it with the spirit of devotion. And if we don't have that, then at least if we try to do something which is prescribed to us, then that's connected. And then gradually we will want to do it. To begin with, we're full of so many material desires, and we want to do things our way, we want to do different things, or we want to go back to the way we were, because we have these pushings and pullings of the desires and the senses. But if we just hang on to the instructions, the spiritual instructions, and we hang on to the directions of the devotees, then in due course of time, our attraction for the material life will pale into insignificance, and we'll be looking back thinking, wow, I never thought I'd be able to give that up. Already we've given up so many things, isn't it? And what we have faced with now, there's always something. Krishna says, whatever you're most attached to, whatever is most dear to you, if you give it up for my service, it qualifies you for eternal life. So it may well have been a year ago you were addicted to smoking cigarettes, and now you're not doing that. It may be now the thing which is most dear to you is, something else, and then you give it up. In this process of just giving it up for Krishna, then what you're not actually losing, you're gaining. Each time you're giving something up, you're gaining more Krishna. And then finally, all that will be left is just Krishna. You purchase Krishna by that devotion. Is that okay? Iskon Govinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande.